Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to the Audio Analyst. Pardon me. Now, before we get into today's interview, I want to thank all my current subscribers and remind our new viewers that if you are enjoying these conversations, if you find any merit or value in the information I'm sharing here, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share links to your favorite episodes with your friends. And please leave your comments and questions. I love hearing from you. And should you wish to take a more active role in supporting the channel, and in that process, receive exclusive access and content, I hope you would consider becoming a patron. You'll find a wide range of Patreon subscription levels available to meet any budget or level of generosity. And if a one-time donation makes more sense for you using Patreon, PayPal, or Venmo, I've provided the necessary information in the comments section. Please understand, your support at any level that's comfortable for you ensures the continued production of these conversations and is sincerely appreciated. Now, today, I have a special treat for you all. This is something that's been in the works for some time and finally came together this last week. Today, I'm sharing a rather extensive interview with the lead designer, the chief designer for Von Schweikert Audio, Leif Swanson. We talked for over an hour. Now, as Albert von Schweikert's hand-picked replacement, I have to say, what VSA has done since Albert retired in 2015, under the direction of Albert's son, Damon, VSA's new CEO, and their chief designer, Leif Swanson, is nothing short of exceptional. I hope you find it as informative and enjoyable to watch as we had fun shooting it. All right, everyone, as promised, today we have the chief designer from Von Schweikert Audio, Leif Swanson, and I'm going to introduce him now. Let's see if we can have a little conversation with Leif. Welcome, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Weaver?
I'm okay, pal. How's it going there?
Hanging in there. Yeah.
What's your weather like out there? I had snow and 31 degrees this morning.
Well, so you know where I live. So
Southern Cal,
we've been
on
having
the lake.
yeah, on a lake. So there's been a few days where it's still been hitting 90 degrees, which is just absolutely fantastic for me. I know you're a cold weather person.
Have you had the boat in the water?
No, the water is, because there are some cold days. The water is actually getting colder. So
right.
you know, I should go out on the boat today, really.
Well, then let's get this done so you can go have some fun. What do you think?
I got some work to do, but yeah, no,
I know the feeling. Great. I know the feeling. But listen, what I wanted to start with, I mean, I've got some questions and I want to, I'm going to go through them with you, but basically I know you're a musician. I know you play, but for our viewers, would you talk about how you got into music, what moved you enough to get into music, and then take that the next step on what drew you into the equipment that is used to play it back? Can you go there for us?
Yeah, I can. My father was it's kind of funny. He was a construction worker, but he played the acoustic guitar and he could sing very, very well. And not only could he could sing in both English and he could sing in Spanish.
Wow.
And so when I was growing up in San Diego, California, a lot of the nightclubs down there would have my father come and entertain there. You know, it was a different scene versus when I went to the nightclubs, but it really was. But there's an interesting story to that, and I'll tie into that a little bit later. So he always influenced me to, pick up the acoustic guitar. And so I love playing guitar. I do. I own very expensive keyboards, but can I play them? No. But the way keyboards are these days, you hit one key and you got a freaking arena full of sound.
Yeah.
It's like amazing. But
well, I see two guitars behind you there too. So
yeah, that's a custom Martin acoustic electric guitar, which is that's my baby. And then hidden behind the speaker is a American Fender Telecaster, which is
Oh wow.
both those guitars. They appreciate in value. They don't depreciate. I mean,
Yeah.
but I'll never sell them. Those are my babies.
Yeah.
And then there's the which way? Yeah, and there's the Korg Triton Studio music workstation keyboard. Um, Incredible. Yeah. So believe it or not, I mean, we use those for voicing on the speakers. So
Cool.
that they play an essential role of the Von Schweikert sound.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
So anyway, go ahead.
what's that? Good.
No, I was just gonna say. So the dream of wanting to be a rock star, of every probably teenage
Pretty much every
musician.
boy. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was just I was a okay player, um, and had a lot of fun, but have played some pretty big venues, which a lot of that ties into what I'm actually doing now in loudspeaker design. It got me into the what I realized is I was able to mix bands better than I could perform on stage.
Well, you did some time running house sound for concerts and things, didn't you?
Oh yeah, large scale concerts. Yeah,
Yeah.
traveled all over the place. Not a fun lifestyle. Um,
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
um, but you know, being able to take a band and really allow their talent to shine through in the house, and it wasn't just that. There was a lot of groundbreaking things taking place in high end audio at the time. Uh, One of the things I started implementing was I would split the subwoofer mix. So now the sub frequencies that would come through the house were no longer affected by the EQ of each instrument, and thus therefore brought a transparency through that was normally not there before, because they were just using standard, 3 or 4 way crossovers, and every instrument, whatever sub frequencies it put out, was in the mix, and it just
Yeah.
muddied everything up. So I mean, I could talk about this forever, but I mean, it was something that was groundbreaking, and my passion for live music. I mean, that's still at my heart right now, and that's what we put into our speakers.
Yeah. It sounds it. It's clear. They sound pretty well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So now, so Leif, we've
Oh,
known each other a while. I met
mm,
Albert. Well, I start. I want one of those mugs. This is the only. This is
I'll
the
get
only
you one.
swag I have. Albert
No,
sent me this shirt years ago.
I'll get you one. Damon and I just met. I had to go get I had to go get a new phone, and Damon showed up. He rode his Lambretta scooter
Oh wow.
to the phone place. It was cool as hell. And he's got this little white box strapped on strapped onto the scooter.
That's funny.
And he brought me my first Ultra 11 Ultraline Von Schweikert audio mug. He's so good about that. He's always getting me stuff.
Well, I I'm raising my hand. I'd like to have one. I'll talk to Damon later. I'll see if I can get
Yeah,
him to send me one.
yeah,
But
he'll
anyway,
get you.
what I started to say is we've known each other a while, but I've
Hmm.
met, I first started talking to Albert, and as you well know, and anybody who ever spoke with Albert on the phone, a phone call with Albert was an hour minimum, sometimes two and a half. He
I
was so
know.
full of information and so wanted to share it. But, I started talking with him, I think, uh, was 96 or 97 when I started reviewing Von Schweikert loudspeakers.
It was a
Um,
long time ago.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
met him, the first time I met him was at the Stereophile show in Chicago in 1999 at the Palmer House in Chicago. And
Wow.
the first time I actually met Damon was at the 2006 CES when he
Did
was
Damon
helping his
have his
dad
hair
show.
all
No,
spiked
not
up?
then. He didn't then. No. No. Now, I met you the first time, and like I was talking about Albert with the calls, he called me before Exponent 2014 and said, "You got to go meet this guy, Leif, with Endeavor Audio." He had
Oh,
nothing but great things to say about you, but that was the first time we met was Exponent 2014, and you were
right.
running. Was it the the VS? It was the E3s with
The original
all
E3s.
all E3s with all Constellation gear.
Yeah, I
Oh man,
cheated a little.
I was stuck, dude. I mean, the speakers were how much? Like $6,000, $5,000.
No, I think there was 7,000,
Okay. You had
but
more in cables than you had in gear, but it sounded fabulous.
why no? But you know what? I mean, yeah, I cheated. Yes, I ran expensive cables and I
Sounded
ran
great.
premier electronics. But then again, let's not beat around the bush. I also took top 5 systems of the show.
Yes, you did. You got one from me.
With a pair of $7,000 speakers.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people would disagree with that. There's people that are saying, "Oh, your cable should only cost 10% of what the speakers do."
Well, we won't go into that. Yeah, we'll not go there. But listen, so this brings me to my question. I told you when I met all you guys. How and when did you meet Albert and Damon?
Oh God, it was that's really it's a bizarre story. My buddy and I had a CNC shop. Well, we had a wood shop, cabinet shop for
Okay.
we did kitchen cabinets for spec homes, and so one of the things I guess I didn't tie into in the beginning, we were talking about pro audio, is basically I've been building speakers ever since basically my beginning years of high school.
Okay, that's an important thing to bring up. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and it was. Now, granted, I wasn't engineering the crossovers. I was using pre-built crossovers, so the speakers weren't optimum, but still, what we were getting out of them was pretty impressive.
Now you were building for sound reinforcement for shows, for events, or were you building for 2-channel audio?
No, well, no, not 2-channel audio. In the beginning, we were building. Well, look, I couldn't afford to go at that time. I couldn't afford to go and buy, the expensive,
Sure.
floor monitors and PA speakers.
Sure.
So we bought the components and we built them ourselves, and that's where I really got into utilizing processing, which I'm still not a fan of processing for high or for large scale concerts. Yes,
for sound reinforcement. Yeah,
absolutely. You have to have it.
That makes sense.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Say your question again. We were talking about.
I was just, I'm curious to.
Oh, how I met Albert.
How you met those two guys.
Right.
I mean, because I know I'm sure it was interesting, because I know when I met Albert, it was pretty cool.
It was shocking, to say the least. We got approached by a representative of VSA, which wasn't Damon or Albert.
Well, it would have been VSR back then, I think, wouldn't it? No, it wouldn't.
No, it was VSA.
All right.
Actually, I think it was the very beginning of von Schweikert Audio, when they took on that new company name. So anyway, I got approached by a representative, and they were Albert had just designed a new model of speaker, which I believe you actually have in your home theater, called the VR33.
VR33, yeah, I still have my 33s, yeah.
Yes, and so they wanted us to give them a bid on building cabinets for the VR33.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and things were kind of going slow. They weren't like really moving along, and so my partner and I, we got frustrated. We said, well, screw it. We just built the cabinet. The cabinet was pristine. We left the back of the cabinet off so they could see all the dado joints, how it was braced, reinforced, the materials in which we used. And we just took it into von Schweikert Audio and met Albert right there. And I met Damon, whose hair was freaking spiked up. But it was cool. Albert and Damon both checked out the design and how we built the enclosure, knuckle tests and everything on it. Yeah. And they're like, wow. And so that was the beginning of the relationship. They gave me the contract to fabricate the VR33 cabinets.
Now, about when was that? I'm guessing that's like
2008.
I was going to say maybe 2007 or somewhere in there.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. Yeah. I was just curious. I could have looked it up. I was just curious. So
yeah.
So that's how you guys first started working together, right?
Yeah, it first started with just me manufacturing their enclosures for the VR33 model, and then later that led into they wanted a less expensive model, which
VR22?
turned out to be the VR22, and literally for the most part they wanted it to look very similar to the VR33,
right?
And Damon's the one that actually designs the enclosures. Albert tells him what he needs, and Damon designs it.
Right.
And that's the same formula we have today. I tell Damon I need this, and Damon designs it.
Cool.
But then we did the VR22. yeah, that was
which I also reviewed and was a killer little speaker.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't manufacture it and sell it for that same price anymore.
I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So now, okay, so that was. I suspect that ramped you up into thinking about building your own speakers, perhaps. How did Endeavor get started?
Well, there's a lot that took place between me starting to manufacture enclosures for Von Schweikert Audio and then starting Endeavor. I had already worked with Albert. How do I say this? When I used to deliver the speaker enclosures to Albert, I'm trying to figure out how to make this short, and I guess I can't. When I used to deliver the speaker enclosures to Albert, Albert was always in the back designing room.
Right.
And I would sit there, and you know how Albert is. He's talkative.
Oh God, yes.
And then so here I'm sitting, who I love music. And I guess what I should say is, look, during this time when I first started building cabinets for them, I got to go and sit down in front of a pair of Von Schweikert speakers and have a listen. Okay.
Do you remember what model it was?
VR5 Anniversary Mark IIs.
I had a pair of those for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And no, wait, not the Mark II. I had the original. Sorry.
Okay, well, these were the Mark IIs, and yeah. I mean, I hope I don't offend anybody. I was like, holy shit, what the hell is this? I have not heard reproduced music with the sense of realism that I was hearing in that room. Yeah. And I was shocked because, I mean, I didn't mention this earlier. Back in the early 90s, I worked at a high-end audio store called Proven Audio in San Diego, where I actually heard Albert von Schweikert's name before, but I didn't know who he was.
Sure.
You know, and it turns out that he was with, and I heard it from a gentleman by the name of John Furman, who was the Counterpoint representative.
He designed some speakers for Counterpoint, didn't he?
Albert was designing speakers for Counterpoint, and Peter Madnick was there. You know, Einstein.
He's a sweetheart. I miss him.
He is. Yeah. He is. He's a. You know, I
do know what you own. Yes, I've been there, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a genius. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look what he did with Constellation, and then what he did with the Alchemy gear you have, and now what he's doing for what he did with Andrew Jones and ELAC USA for their Alchemy gear. It's amazing.
Right. Well, I like mine better.
Anyhow, so when did Endeavor become Endeavor Audio? When did that actually happen?
So, working with Albert, and this was a shocker. Working with Albert, learning how, I mean, Albert was teaching me his technology. And I told him I wanted to start a speaker company, and I thought everything was going to blow up in my face right there. And I got the exact opposite reaction. The man supported me.
People who didn't know him didn't know he was like that.
Oh,
you heard all the stories. I'm sure you've seen the stories. He was so supportive of everyone.
No, it's all crap. This is one of the most loving men I've ever met in my life. I mean, I looked at him almost, my father passed away when he was 55. I think I was in my early 20s, and if there was ever a second father, it was Albert. It's just unbelievable. This man was nothing but love.
Right.
I've even watched, him and his son getting some pretty heated conflict. And as soon as those are over, big hugs. I love you. Everything's okay. I mean, but so I think Endeavor was about 2013.
Okay.
Maybe 2013, and
was the E3 the first product?
It was, but I mean,
that was the first product I heard from you, buddy.
It is, but it's really not fair, because what I did is Albert had a speaker that he manufactured back in the day called the VR4 Junior.
Yeah, I had a pair of those too.
Yeah, and the price point versus the performance. I mean, look, I'm not going to bullshit. This speaker slaughtered speakers costing 3 times as much.
I know. I had a pair.
It did, but at that time, Von Schweikert didn't really have the inexpensive speakers anymore. Everything. Right. So I'm like, I want to recreate the VR4 Junior. But, I'll do it in a single enclosure. And so, so that was the birth of the E3. And look, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Albert was kind of a part of that. I mean, he looked over my shoulder as I was doing things, and he had little things. And in hindsight, I really wish I would have put the freaking rear ambient tweeter on it. But I was thinking, God, I'm copying VSA too much. I mean, because the speaker already had the gain network in it,
Right.
which I'll probably like to talk about that a little bit later.
Oh yeah, I want to get you on that. Believe me.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. I mean,
I
look.
hate talking about gain and air.
Well, my next question, brother. The reason I asked about when Endeavor happened, because I know this backstory. I've known Albert forever. I've known David forever. I've known you for 7 or 8 years now, 6 or 7 years anyway. So what? I mean, I know there was strong influence from both lines, but was it when Albert retired that you guys decided to merge? Well, how did Endeavor become part of and a line of von Schweikert Audio?
Oh, okay. The long story is well, Albert was still chief designer for VSA. A new speaker company trying to launch into this industry is extremely difficult.
No kidding.
Some of the audio shows I did, Albert paid for because I didn't have the capital to do it.
Sure.
And so it was very, very complicated. And even though the Endeavor speakers were winning awards,
yes,
was very difficult getting them into dealers.
Okay.
So literally when Albert retired at the beginning of 2015 and Damon took over as CEO, Damon came to me, and the one thing I love about Damon, he's very direct and always, he just speaks his mind. He's like, look, we have to stop screwing around. We let's not run two different companies. Let's run one company. Let's bring. He's like, I love the E3 speaker and what it stands for. Let's bring it into the VSA product line. And I'm like, freaking cool. That's perfect.
I have to admit that's the right move to make.
Yeah, Damon,
the relationship was there to begin with, and the price structure was so good it gave von Schweikert a much more affordable product line that was killer. I think it was a great decision on both parties.
Let's not bullshit. I mean, come on. The E3 is a von Schweikert speaker. I mean, everything that I put into that speaker was based off of what I've learned from Albert.
Sure.
It's a von Schweikert speaker. It was. And when it comes to business, Damon's the smart guy. I'm the surfer that just like me.
Totally get it, buddy.
Yeah.
So listen, now I want to talk about the VR111 XR. What was it? XS.
Yeah.
Because I know a little bit about it. I've written about it. When I did the Ultra 9 review, I talked about how it came to be. But if you can touch on briefly what that meant and how it changed the thinking at von Schweikert Audio for both you and Damon, then we're going to talk about the von Schweikert speakers, what the Ultra line represents, because I have a pair here, and I got to tell you, I had a oh my god moment last night.
What happened?
I was doing some tweaking to my tone arm and stylus.
Oh.
And I pulled out that 1972 Beethoven's Ninth.
Oh God.
And I about exploded, dude. The finesse I've got from that system last night. I mean, I spent 45 minutes tweaking some things on the tone arm and the stylus. And
that's what we do.
But yeah, sorry, I'm a geek. But oh my God, the Ultra 9s. Anyway, talk about the 111 project. Very briefly. I want to get into the speakers quick, but I want you to talk about that.
I got to apologize. There's no brief about it, so we're just gonna have to run with it. You're gonna have to bear with me.
All right.
This is this was a life-changing event for VSA. And literally, it was a longtime VSA customer. You know the story, but a longtime VSA customer that literally, this isn't a customer. These guys are family.
Yeah.
They're family. That literally said, Albert, if money wasn't an issue, what could you build for me? And you have to understand, this guy has a listening room like most people do not. This is, spare no expense. This is like Jurassic Park. Spare no expense, and that's the way it is. The guy has the most awesome electronics. He's got literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in cables. He's got Studer, reel to reel, both half-inch and quarter-inch tape machines. He's got recordings that are to die for. And at the time, our most expensive flagship speaker was the VR11, Mark II.
Yeah,
VR11
and
Mark
I
II.
heard the VR11 introduction in 2004.
It was a great speaker.
No kidding.
Yeah. I mean, that speaker would still give some speakers a run for their money.
Yeah.
But when Albert started designing the VR11s, we had crossed I was a part of that project, although I had nothing to do with the design stage of it. I helped build them, but Albert and I were doing a lot of testing, and Albert had made some improvements to the gain technology. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. But so basically, this speaker, well, first of all, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you had 4 woofers at the bottom. You had 4 mid ranges in a vertical array with the tweeters off to the side of them. So what we had is this most amazing. It's like a hybrid. It was line array mid range treble section with the woofers at the top and the bottom of the enclosure. But what the new technology did, where we advanced in the gain circuitry, was a way of lowering distortion in a way that we have not yet been able to do. And one of the things that we did before we delivered these speakers to the client was we told him, we're sorry, we have to build up a pair of VR11s because we need to match them up against this speaker.
Sure.
And the moment Damon and I listened to the A/B comparison, Damon and I looked at each other immediately, and we realized at that point in time we needed to redesign our product line. Yeah. From this point on, utilizing all this trickle down technology that we gained from the VR111s. It was what Albert did with the VR111s is shocking for me as a designer. It's shocking. It was groundbreaking. It's revolutionary in ways, and it's difficult to talk about because how do you talk about it without exposing a lot of what you're looking
secrets.
at?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
No, I mean, I was aware that was Albert's swan song and that he retired right after that. And in the Ultra 9 piece that I did for the Absolute Sound, I went into how it affected both of you and how it made you guys redesign and rethink your top flight line. And that was the beginning of the Ultras. And I remember hearing the Ultra 11 for the first time at Exponent 2017. And as a matter of fact, my show report was called the Ultra 11 or the Ultra 11 Experience. I didn't really talk about much else. Yeah. So yeah, it was significant, brother. It was significant.
That show was so many people that went and sat in that front seat. And the moment I started playing Roger Waters, they immediately turned to me, and you'd see their facial expression.
Yeah. Totally. All right, so the 111 was groundbreaking. The 111 was groundbreaking. We understand now that used pretty much all the same material driver, right? Those were all magnesium drivers, pretty much.
Yeah, Albert always believed in the one voice. And,
I get that. Yeah.
The beauty of all the magnesium drivers is that the tweeter, whatever frequency it was overlapping with the mid-range drivers, they had that same tonality. They had that one voice sound. Sure. And that's critical. And that's something that Damon and I, we will never change that. That will always be the foundation of every single one of our designs, is the one voice.
Sure. Now, do me a favor.
What?
Talk about what I think. I mean, the crossover itself with air and gain, acoustic inverse replication, which Albert, I believe, published back in 1984 when he was working with Richard Heiser.
Yeah.
I believe. And gain, Global Access Integration Network, I know
Right.
these are all buzzwords, but
Right.
I don't want you to give away secrets. But talk to me about the concept, because what I understand about it is these speakers present a spherical radiation pattern, forward and
Correct.
backward. They're
Yes.
not, they don't lobe. I know too many speakers that use first order crossovers that as you stand up and sit down, they just, you're like, are you kidding me?
Well, there's speakers that use second and third order crossovers that do the
True,
same
but yeah.
thing.
But what I've written about your speakers and what other people have noticed about your speakers is and I talked about this at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest in 2019 when you introduced the Ultra 9s.
Right.
I was sitting on the extreme outside wall with you were there with
Kind of like
Kevin.
you're almost sitting in the middle, huh?
Dude, I was
Pretty
sitting
close.
on the extreme outside wall against the wall with Kevin Hayes from VAC, and
Right.
this look came over my face. And Kevin just looks at me with that Cheshire cat look. He goes, "You heard it, huh?" I'm like,
Right. I love Kevin.
Oh, dude, the unique thing about your speakers is no matter where you are in the room,
Right.
and in my case, I was against the extreme right wall,
Right.
you still hear stereo. Granted,
Right.
it was skewed. It wasn't
Little
straight
skewed.
back and forward, but it was skewed
Yeah.
off. But it was still a stereo image. There was left, there was right, there was front, there was back.
Right.
Now, talk to me about how gain and air and your ambience retrieval, because as far as I'm concerned, this is what makes Von Schweikert. You guys, there's nobody else out there that can do this. Even our friend Michael Fremer
I know.
indicated that these speakers did something he'd never heard before.
Yeah, well, here, I'll give you the quote. I've never owned or reviewed a speaker that behaves so well off axis.
Okay.
Albert, God, Greg, you and I could talk about this for ages.
I want our viewers, buddy, to understand what the magic is with the Von Schweikerts, because, dude, look, I've been blessed. I've known since the VR4 Gen 2. That was my first pair of Von Schweikerts. That was what, 96, 97? There's been a pair of Von Schweikert loudspeakers in my home ever since then.
Yeah, I got a couple pair of VR2s in the shop right now getting upgraded into VR44s.
If you come into some VR1s that nobody wants, you yell at me. I want a pair.
People don't get rid of VR1s.
I'm just saying.
No,
I remember
know.
the introduction of that speaker. I was there when he introduced that speaker.
I saw a pair on AudioGone for sale, and we're talking about a speaker that's what is
it was $1,000 retail new.
Yeah, how much?
They were $1,000 a pair new retail.
Yeah, no, this was for sale for $950, and they were gone a week later.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
dude, I heard them. I would own them.
Yeah, no, they're oh god, the good old days.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, God, I mean, how Albert? Look, when I met Albert, so much of his time, Albert would talk to people on the phone for hours, and
I was one of them.
Yeah, I didn't know if the guy slept, because after he got through with the phone, it was immediately into the back, experimenting, working with so many things. Now, I was very blessed because when Albert started taking me under his wing and teaching me, what I got is I got what worked, and then he would tell me what didn't work. So I kind of got like the advanced crash course without having to go through all the failures that Albert went through. And Albert had a lot of failures. Now Albert's gone now, and I miss him, but he's gone now. And so now Damon and I go through these failures because Damon and I aren't stopping. We're continuing. Albert left such a wonderful foundation for us to build on. And so we're constantly trying to push the envelope on what can be achieved. So we're constantly experimenting. I mean, we the amount of money we throw out in testing and experimenting is sickening.
It's called research and development budget.
Yeah. But
that's how you expense it with the accountants at the end of the year, anyway.
Right. So what are we talking about? We're talking about gain and air.
Well, we don't have to talk about them specifically, but
no, we can't.
What I'm concerned with is there's the one thing that separates Von Schweikert from every other speaker that I've ever heard, whether it's Wilsons or Magicos or other good brands.
Wow, I
You
didn't think we had
guys,
no names.
you guys soundstage and image and create a stand up and walk around soundstage
Right.
much better, much more realistically, much more authentically in terms of its size, shape, everything than any other speaker I've ever run into.
Albert was was a professional musician. So you're looking at a man that spent a lot of time researching. You ever hey, remember at Capitol Audio Fest the night that they had the band in the restaurant?
Yeah.
And you could get up and walk around. You know how the sound didn't change?
Yep.
Well, Albert was fascinated with that. And he's like, this is how a speaker is supposed to reproduce sound. Okay, but unfortunately, we don't have that. We're trapped with many speaker manufacturers where the speakers are beaming at you. And so Albert got really heavily into the research of psychoacoustics. And that was one of the first things when I got there is he gave me these books to read on psychoacoustics. I mean, that's some heavy shit.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. It's crazy stuff. But, you know, as we grow up and the way the ear-brain mechanism works, how we hear things, you know, we can distinguish whether something's beaming at us or whether something's omnidirectional and the sound is there, but you can't lock in where it's coming from. And these were things that fascinated Albert. And like I said, we could talk about this for hours. I mean, some of the experiments we did, I mean, sometimes we just get a reel-to-reel tape machine and we'll get a microphone and we'll run around the factory banging on stuff and listening to how it comes back in the recording, and then we'll put our head where the microphone is, and then the same person runs around and bangs stuff, and we start to figure out, okay, what do we have to do to get the speaker to reproduce that and give that same space and dimensionality of what's taking place? I mean, this is crazy stuff. I mean, let's be honest. Measuring equipment, testing equipment is quite crude.
Yeah, it is.
It's quantity. It's not quality. So the best quality we have for engineering loudspeakers, believe it or not, is still the human brain. Now, don't get me wrong, the measurements do help.
Sure.
But we are, you know, we're kind of in the Stone Age with the way measurements work. Measurements can't really identify psychoacoustics in a loudspeaker. Now, Albert's created a couple things that help in the engineering.
They really work. Yeah.
They help, but are they perfect? Maybe not necessarily, but we're constantly still working with trying to you know, to advance that. We're not stopping. It's a constant day by day you know, search for figuring out how to relate how our ear and brain interprets things versus the way the measurements do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care what anybody says. You can have the flattest measuring loudspeaker in the world. Does it mean it's going to sound good? Oh, hell no.
No.
It's not.
And I've said this for years, Leif. As soon as you can show me a measurement, a group of measurements together, interleaved, a waterfall plot that can show me why this speaker disappears from the room and it just leaves image and soundstage, and why this one doesn't, it's only a good jumping off point. So, granted, measurements are useful, but you know, I know a few reviewers who believe that measurements answer all the questions.
No,
you and I both know they do not. They only raise more questions, in my opinion.
No, that's
and what you guys have done with, I mean, I don't know how, you know, you'll talk to designers who tell you you cannot do spherical radiation patterns.
Oh, that's
but
crap.
I'm hearing it.
There were things about omnidirectional speakers that Albert liked, and there were things about them that he did not like.
Sure.
And it's the same thing for me. There's things about him I like. There's things about him I don't like. Albert wanted to figure out, how do we get an omnidirectional sound, but still yet have the attack, have that pinpoint accuracy of where the instruments are. Oh, nice. Olives. Cool.
Shut up.
No.
Quit worrying about my drink and talk about speakers.
Yeah. And that's where that's where air really came in, the acoustic inverse replication. Yeah, and this was extensive studies on how microphone pickup patterns work, and then how reflections came back into the microphone, and I don't even think other speaker designers even look. What are the frequencies in which those reflections come back at? So therefore, this is why the rear ambient with the adjustable volume on the on our speakers really gives you the ability to really increase the depth of the soundstage and the space, and seriously hear more of the venue in which this was recorded, whether it was in a studio or whether it was in a hall. Air and the Global Access Integration Network, I mean, they work hand in hand. They
Sure.
really they really do. I mean, but when you talk about the off axis, Albert always felt that the off-axis response is every bit as important as the on-axis response. And on-axis response is a beam.
Yeah.
For the most part. So the fact that you can sit in front of a VSA speaker in the sweet spot, and just like when I'm here at home, I crank these puppies up right here and I want to go in my kitchen, which is in the other room through the hallway, I'm not hearing any tonality shift or change. There's no difference. I mean, other than the fact that, yes, I can tell I move further away from the speaker.
Sure. Yeah.
That's it. And that's something that I think is what captures the reality. When you're in you go and you listen to a couple violin players and there's a cello there and, or whatever stringed instruments they are. When you get up and move around, the sound stage isn't shifting. It doesn't shift. Most speakers I listen to when I go to the audio shows, the moment you get up and move, you brought up a certain company's name. I'm not going to say their name, but man, the moment you cough, sneeze, or fart, or move or stretch or anything like that, there's a huge change in the sound.
Well, and
That's
they also
not right.
shift tonality too, buddy. I mean,
Yeah, right.
and that's why I ended up with I've been in the Von Schweikert camp a long time, but when I heard the nines, what was the first thing I said to you and Keith when I heard the nines? I said, "What'd you do to the mid range?" Oh my God.
Oh,
yeah. But dude, those speakers knocked me out, and I stressed and fought with my wife. No, I didn't fight with my wife. I just but I waited from when I heard them at Rocky Mountain in October till Munich. It was in Munich when I told you guys, yeah, all right, go ahead, build me a set. Damn it. Leif, I'm telling you, you heard them here in my house when you delivered them for the Ultra 9 review for Absolute Sound.
Oh yeah.
I've had a few speakers in my room over the years. I'm pushing 100 years old. I've been doing this a long time. I've been reviewing equipment since the late 1980s.
Right.
What happens in this room with the Ultra 9s? It's what I've been waiting for all my life. I can't thank you guys enough for making an Ultra 9.
Well,
it is ultra magic. It is so wonderful. And the fact is, if I step out of the room, yes, it's different sounding, but I don't get those timbre shifts that you get with other speakers when you step out of the sweet spot.
Right.
And I don't know how you do it, and I don't really care to know how, because knowing the secret of the trick doesn't make the trick any better. But the way these things present off-axis information, and dude, standing up, sitting down, stepping off to the right, stepping back 4 feet,
right.
It's as perfect as I've heard from any loudspeakers pulling off this trick. So right. I'm glad you guys are doing it. And I just wanted you to talk about Albert's magic and what you guys are still doing to push the envelope, because I think what you're doing, nobody else is close, in my opinion. What do I know? I'm just saying.
Well, that means I can't tell you how much that means to us. I really can't, and I'm so happy that the Ultra 9s are they're giving you joy.
Oh, man, and the color. My wife hates everything. You were here when she stepped into the room and said, "Those are pretty."
Yeah.
You were here, so yeah. They're gorgeous. They're gorgeous.
I want to say something to the viewers, whoever's watching this.
Yeah.
I was terrified when I first walked into Greg's room. I was, because I looked at it. I'm thinking, okay, this isn't a very wide room. This is a narrow room. Greg's room's actually way narrower than mine.
Yeah, it's 13 feet. Yeah,
yeah. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh,
but it's
but it's
46
very
feet
deep.
long.
Yeah, it's very deep. And man, the moment that we hooked up the Ultra 9s, and I started walking around the room, you didn't experience the peaks and dips and the bass response. And it's just such an incredibly well-behaved room. And there's a room that's the same size to the side of Greg's room. So there's these two big doorways, one fairly close to the front of the speaker on the right channel, and then one much further back, which is like this aperiodic venting.
Yep.
So
they're different sizes. They're different shapes. Yeah.
It's amazing. His room's fantastic. I was shocked, and I was actually very happy because I was worried.
Dude, I've had grown musicians, guys who make their livings playing instruments, sit in this chair and cry, telling me they had no idea that reproduced music could sound that good. And it's all your fault, buddy.
No, that's because musicians, and I'm one, are stupid, and we get used to what pro audio is, and we have no idea of what something can sound like when it's recorded well. Unfortunately, there's a lot of recording engineers out there that are just
junk. They produce junk.
Yeah, they just butcher the crap out of it. But fortunately, I'm very blessed. There's so much new recorded content coming out where the recordings are just so much better, and
they really are.
Yeah. So I'm actually happy for that.
Let me ask you. You've been doing this at VSA since you guys took command of the company in 2015, right?
Hang on a second. You want to go back a little bit about the gain and the air off axis?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Albert found a way to keep the phase and the amplitude consistent throughout the off and on axis response. This is what gain does. Gain is a way that the drivers can actually communicate with one another that defies what the people are going to throw a shit fit over this, defies what the standard textbooks say for loudspeaker engineering. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. It is. Sure. That's why you can walk up and stand 1 foot in front of a von Schweikert speaker and you don't hear the closest driver to you. What you hear is you hear the whole.
Yeah.
You'd agree with that, right?
Absolutely. Not only that, you hear both speakers.
Yeah.
You don't just hear the gelled voice of the one. You hear both speakers still.
Right. So a funny thing happened. We had one of Albert's old custom speakers come in for repair, and this wasn't even a production model speaker. And I'm looking at it. I'm trying to figure out how to repair it, and I'm freaking out because this is how one of Albert's early stage gain technology topologies on the crossover. I was trying to reverse engineer it and I couldn't. I had to literally start from scratch, try to figure out what I think Albert was changing in the design parameters in which to implement the psychoacoustics of it, and had to engineer a new crossover for it. Wow. It's pretty intense, but yeah, it's Albert's theory is that a speaker should sound the same just about no matter where you were. Yeah. And this changes everything, because this even changes how room integration. Let's talk about room integration real quick.
Yeah.
It changes the way that the speaker has reflections off the walls in comparison to speakers that beam.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's revolutionary.
I don't disagree, buddy. Do me a favor.
What?
Tell our viewers what happened when the crossover design guru Siegfried Linkwitz met with Albert. Tell him how that went, will you? Can you share that story?
That's weird. You get a couple Germans in the same room together. The language barrier goes right out the window.
That's funny.
Yeah, he literally was freaking out. And he said, Albert, you've engineered a completely new crossover. Now, in all fairness, what's funny is all our crossovers always do start out as linkwits. But then once we start implementing the game technology, there's it's God, it's so difficult for me to talk about. But it always starts out as a linkwits crossover. But he actually said, Albert, you've created something that's completely new. And he was trying to grasp it. And unless you're in the design program with us when we're doing this, and you're looking at all the measurements and you start figuring out what we want to change, where we want to change it, and how we're going to implement some of the psychoacoustics parameters in which Albert's engineered, you can't figure it out. So someone could buy our speakers and they could sit there and try to measure them and try to figure out why we designed the crossover that way. Won't happen. Or if it does, it's going to take years and years. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
But watching those two talk.
I can only imagine because I had the pleasure of knowing Albert and spending considerable amount of time with him. I can't remember when it was. It was probably about 2008 or 9. I went out to California to hang out for a while, visited some friends, and we spent an evening. We started the afternoon at the shop, and then went out to dinner with Albert. And he was first of all, he was such a charismatic guy.
Yeah.
Okay. You couldn't. When he walked into the room, you were like, "Oh crap, what's he going to talk about? He's cool as hell." And he was so engaging. And he'd always be apologetic. Well, you don't want to hear about that. I'm like, no, go ahead, it's okay.
Right.
But he was so giving. He would tell you anything you wanted to know. Well, within limits, no secrets. But he would tell you why things were working, and it was so much fun to hang out with him. I don't know, man. I miss him. He and Siegfried are both gone, but I don't know. I'm honored to have known him and to have been able to call him a friend.
I think about Damon losing his father, and I lost a lot too. I mean, he was my he's my mentor.
Yeah.
And I don't really have anybody to talk about design with anymore. I mean, everything that I've done at von Schweikert while he was still alive, I was constantly communicating with him.
Sure.
Look, I want to do this. And he was, and he was always funny. I'm like, well, what do you think about this? He's like, yeah, screw it. Try it. Let's see what happens.
That's funny.
And I don't have that anymore. So
yeah.
It's
a major loss, buddy.
Yeah.
He's a major loss. Listen, let me ask you this finally, and I'll let you go. I know you got stuff to do. So I think I know, but how about talking to our viewers here and tell them where you think von Schweikert Audio will be over the next maybe 5 or 10 years? I mean, I'm not asking for secrets, but where do you see yourself? Where do you see you guys going in the next 5 or 10 years? What do you think is going to happen?
At the top.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop. I mean, we're going to keep doing as much research. I mean, things keep getting better and better. Driver technology is getting better. Distortion levels keep coming down. I mean, crossover components keep getting better. Material science is getting better and better.
Yep.
I mean, us. I mean, you got companies that think, oh, aluminum's the magic answer, or X material. And Albert's theory, Albert didn't believe there was one magical material, and there's not. You can see that in Michael Fremer's review on the
Ultra 55s.
Yeah, you match that up against the Magico M2. Look at our resonance compared to Magicos.
Yeah.
There's not one magical material, it's multiples. You got to have all these materials with different Q factors, and it changes things. And so we are constantly, it's something we haven't become lackadaisical on. We are constantly looking at what we can do to make improvements. We are constantly experimenting, even to the wire, the internal wiring that we're using inside of the speakers, damping compounds, that isolate the drivers from the cabinet.
Right.
You know, and even now, you know, I'm really happy to say, you know, we're working with Critical Mass Systems now for custom
Yep.
outriggers for some of
I
our
was talking to
speakers.
Joe about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my God, I mean, you want to talk about CMS? Like, I have them all throughout my system here, and I can't live without them. This is something that I think is also revolutionary. You know, I trust me, being a speaker manufacturer, I mean, we've had dozens and dozens of other people's cables. We've had dozens and dozens of other people's, you know, isolation devices. And
Yep.
I'll tell you what, CMS, they're at the top of the game right there.
Well, I gotta give a shout out to you and Damon both, because when I wrote about the original CMS footers and certain forums started to talk about it, the pushback from some of the ignorant people who had no idea what they were talking about was frustrating to me, and it almost put
Right,
me off forums for good. But
right.
you and Damon both came in and said things not just to support my viewpoints, but that explained why people should just try these things. I mean, you know, I think what Joe's done with the CMS footers, with the center stage 2 footers, is phenomenal. I've been playing with footers since 1984. Mission
Right,
came out with both the Isoplat, and my now friend Steve McCormick came out with the Mod Squad Tiptoes. Those both came out in 1984. I've been
right.
playing with these things ever since. Okay.
Sure.
But what Joe's done with the CMS, and you know why you have them in your system?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you went on record saying that your less expensive electronics with footers were infinitely better than your much more expensive equipment without it. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
amazing.
Basically, $10,000 worth of electronics that had $6,000 worth of footers was outperforming a $30,000 amplifier and a $30,000 preamplifier.
Yeah,
I
it's nothing to
shit you
sneeze at.
not.
Yeah, it's nothing.
And then of course now the new speaker footers are out.
Yeah,
These things are amazing. I mean,
I know
it's
they are.
critical mass. It's amazing. People need to understand what this stuff does. It's doing things. It's allowing the engineering from these electronic manufacturers and even embarrassing as it is, even me as a speaker manufacturer, it's doing something that we're not looking at. And it's, I mean, when it takes a VR55 speaker almost to the level of an Ultra 55 speaker just by adding these footers. And the
It's
cool thing is,
remarkable.
yeah,
It's remarkable.
it's remarkable. Um, it's crazy. You know, Greg, you and I both know everything is based off of synergy.
Yep.
It really is, and you know, kind of the difference now when I first went to Von Schweikert versus to where I'm at now is when I was first at Von Schweikert, people call up and they'd be interested in speakers. Now, when they call up, they're interested in the complete system.
Yeah.
They're like, just this is how much money I have to spend. What can I get? And I want this sound. How do I get that?
Yeah.
And that's the difference. I think people are getting frustrated and fed up with, you know, all the, you know, they'll read a review and they'll get something and they'll put it in their system and realize it's not quite what
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking
I
about.
do. Yeah. You
Yeah,
know, a long time ago. I can't remember which writer it was, but and I've addressed it too. That you know, you can't go to these pick lists that have these are class A, these are class B, these are class C, and pick up pick an amplifier, a phono stage, a turntable, a cartridge, speaker cables, and speakers from class A, put them together, and have a class A system. It doesn't
right.
necessarily work like that. It is all synergy, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I just what I've heard from von Schweikert speakers over the years is ultra. Not just because that's your new name, but
Right.
what you guys have done over the years. I mean, I bought the first pair of von Schweikerts I ever reviewed, and I bought the Gen 2s because I heard a pair of Gen 1s and went, those are only $39.95. And this was what,
Yeah.
nineteen
He
ninety four or 5?
Albert underpriced
Oh
everything,
my God.
unfortunately.
Look, I, there was a review that came out back then that took the Wilson, Watts,
Watt puppy.
and the puppies,
Yeah.
which were, I believe at the time, were $16,000 or $18,000 a set.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were close to $18,000 for the speakers,
Right.
and compared them to the $39.95 VR4s. And guess which speakers won?
Oh no, I know which speakers won. That begun the war.
Yeah. Well, that was my introduction to the von Schweikerts, was the VR4s. So
yeah.
I
don't know. Something that's, when Damon and I kind of re-engineered our product line after Albert retired. Now keep in mind, Albert's still he's still in the background. I'm still communicating with him throughout a lot of this. We came out with Ultra 11 speaker, flagship speaker, and that was based off of everything that was done from the VR 111.
Right.
And Damon and I said, screw it. We're going to take this to the audio shows, even though audio shows are the worst. I mean, come on, big ballrooms, 5 seconds of slap echo. Everything's horrible about them. And we said, screw it, we're going to do it. You didn't see Wilson bringing the Chronosonic to any of those shows or the XDX. You didn't see any of that crap. Yeah. You don't see it. They won't bring it to the shows. We did. We took the risk. We're like, we're going to do it. We'll take it to the shows, and we don't stop. We'll stay up until 4:00 in the morning trying to get stuff dialed in and trying to figure out how to make it work.
Well, and to your credit, buddy, let's go back to since Expona 2017. How many best of shows in Munich, in the United States, in DC, in Chicago? How many best of shows have you guys won from how many different magazines, from how many different writers?
How am I supposed to answer that without sounding cocky? More than any other manufacturer out there.
Yeah.
But,
no doubt.
I owe a lot of that to Damon, because there's times where I'd become, I'm like, oh, okay, it's good. And Damon would be like, no. He's like, come on, let's listen to this. And he'd push me and he'd drive me to the point where he and I get in some heated arguments. But I love him like a brother, and he tries to push the best out of me all the time.
Well, and you know what, you guys, I've known you both for a while, and you guys are very different in my opinion. But
we're complete opposites in a lot of ways.
You're a perfect complement. You guys, he fills your weaknesses and you fill his weaknesses. I think it's a great combination. I really do, personally.
Well, I think we're both painting each other's asses.
That could well be, buddy.
No, I love him. I love him to death.
Leif, we've had a great time talking. I really want to let you go. I know you've got stuff to do. I've got a bunch of stuff to do. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and I can't thank you enough for all you do, because what you guys do right now, I think you're at the top of your game, and I think personally, I think von Schweikert is the line everybody should be looking at any price point. I really believe that.
I can't thank you enough, and Damon and I, we're huge fans of everything you do as well, and we really are, and we wish you the best of success. Your video channel, I think, is awesome.
Thank you, buddy.
I always look forward to watching the videos, although I don't know if I'm going to watch this one.
Well, but I hope you do, and I hope our viewers enjoyed the time you took to give us some of your thoughts and insights on this, because I certainly appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, till next time, take care, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
You too, brother.
Well, there you have it. A rather engaging conversation with one of the most gifted and significant loudspeaker designers in our industry today. I hope you are all as grateful as I am that Leif was willing to share so much of his time and to answer my questions. As always, thank you for taking the time to drop by and visit today, guys. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving here in the U.S. Please remember to subscribe and to like and share your favorite episodes, as well as to post your comments and questions. Please stay safe in this most unusual of times and keep the music playing. Till next week, cheers.